She turned the key, and the car went quiet. The dash clock ticked, and the morning air smelled like gasoline and rain on brick. Somewhere down the block, a city bus sighed, and a pigeon clapped its wings once and settled. Carrie Cash laid both hands at the top of the steering wheel, thumbs touching like she was holding a small circle together. She watched her boy walk to the glass door and pull it open. His shoulders were set like he was carrying a case, though he had come in with only his voice and a folded paper with a song he had written in the night. He did not look back. The door closed on him with a soft rubber sound and took his reflection with it. She sat a little straighter. Her purse slid off the passenger seat and thumped the floor mat. In the next 20 minutes you will see how Carrie Cash held the line while her boy went in, and the one thing she did when he came back to the car. That was the whole of this morning. It was not about a city or a station name or who might be behind that door. It was about a mother's hands on a wheel and the choice not to start the engine. She did not start it. She did not even turn it far enough to make the radio hum. She left the key at off and felt the quiet sit down beside her. A milk truck rattled past, glass clinking like a shelf of bells. She lifted the strap of her purse back onto the seat and set it right. She took a breath. She let it go. Most mothers know this kind of hour. It does not wear a clock right. The light is the same from 1 minute to the next. The street sounds come like a slow river. Your mind reaches for every small thing to hold, then lets them all go again. She touched the seam in the vinyl with her fingertip. She straightened the little cardboard church fan from First Assembly that she kept tucked in the door pocket. She looked at the second hand on the dash clock and watched it step. It ticked like a sewing machine that needed oil. What does a mother say when there are no more words to say? She did not speak. She put the heel of her right hand against the wheel and pressed until it hurt, as if her bones could send a message muscle and mouth could not. She turned her palm over and laid it flat. The leather felt warm from the early Tennessee sun pushing through the windshield. She had told him gently on the way in to eat a little more. He had waved it off with a half smile and said he could not. He had not slept much, and there were circles under his eyes like somebody had pressed a coin there and left the shape. He had said, "Be back soon, Mama," and shut the door soft so as not to rattle the glass. She could still feel the small shift the car made when he stepped out, the way a boat moves when one person goes over the side and the other leans to keep it. She did not bow her head all the way. She just set her eyes on the part of the windshield where the wipers met and let them rest there. A city worker in a cap swept along the curb with a straw broom. The bristles made a dry whisper on the sidewalk. Farther down, a diner put a sugar shaker on a counter and flipped the open sign. A Coca-Cola bottle clinked into a crate. A payphone hung on a brick wall by the building door, the kind with a cradle that looked like a strong hand. She watched it the way a person watches a door in a hospital corridor. She reached for the small thermos she had set on the seat and unscrewed the cup. The lid threads clicked twice. She poured, and the steam came up and marked the air with the smell of coffee. She held the cup in both hands and lifted it just a little, the way women in her line did when they could not put into words what they needed to carry, and then she set it down untouched. She did not know it yet, but the next 2 hours would decide the way she carried him from then on. Not whether he sang or not, not whether somebody wrote his name down on a card. It would decide whether she would walk by his side from a place of fear or a place that could be quiet. She touched the fan at the door again, the one with the funeral home's name on the back, and slid it halfway up like a person airing a loaf of bread. It looked like waiting. It was work. Her mother had taught her the way of it when the boys were young. You set a place inside yourself and hold it still. You keep your hands where you mean them to be. You do not push. You do not panic. You let your breath come in and go out, and you do not let it speed up because a thing you love is behind a door you cannot open. She laid her left hand over her right as if she was keeping it from breaking formation. Across the street, a greyhound hissed to a stop. 2 sailors stepped off with their duffel bags and looked around as if the buildings might speak. A woman with a scarf tied under her chin counted change into her gloved palm and shook her head at the bus driver. The light off the diner's window made a square on the hood of the car. Carrie shifted in her seat. The vinyl squeaked against her skirt. She kept seeing him at 12, walking back across a Dyer's field with his pant legs wet to the knee and his small face set hard in a way a child's face should not know how to be. He had come in and stood by the wood stove and would not eat at first. She had said his name twice, and he had not answered her. She pressed her thumb now against the stitching on the wheel. There was a place where the thread had popped a little. Her thumbnail found it and held there. The dashboard clock's second hand ticked loud. She looked down at it and then away. She did not want to live by it. A man in a short-sleeved shirt and a tie walked up the steps of the building and held the door for a girl carrying sheet music. The girl smiled and went in. The man let the door close and stood outside for a moment, as if the air inside had held something he was not ready to swallow. Then he went in too. She closed her eyes for 3 breaths. She opened them again. A bee bumped the glass and slid down like a small coin. She touched the key, then took her fingers off of it. She would not turn it. Gasoline was 20 cents a gallon last month, but that was not the reason. The noise was the reason. The quiet was a kind of covering she could set over the space between that door and her hands. Anyone who has sat in a parked car outside a building where somebody they love has gone in knows about this air. It has a shape to it. It presses your shoulder blades toward each other and sets your jaw. You can smell the day on the street, fried eggs from the diner, a little rubber from somebody's tires, rain dried off a curb, and still there is a separate smell inside, the one that comes from hope and fear sharing the same small place. She thought about his girls in Memphis and how their hair smelled when she hugged them. Little girl soap and outside, and sometimes aqua net when their mama fixed them up for church. She thought about his wife and the way she said please and thank you, like a woman who meant them when she said them. She thought of the small blue suitcase Johnny had carried to Germany years back, and how light it had been when he came home with it. She breathed in and out. She did not speak. A boy on a bicycle coasted past with both hands off the handlebars and a grin like a dare. He put one hand back down at the last minute and righted himself. She watched the wobble and the save and felt a flash of something that tasted like a warning and like a praise at the same time. She lifted the thermos cup and wet her lips with coffee, that had cooled to warm. She set it back down and tightened the lid. At some point, a cloud crossed the sun. The car cooled a degree. She moved her hands down to the bottom of the wheel and then back up to the top, like a woman moving along a rail in prayer, hand over hand. A policeman strolled by and tipped his hat. She nodded. He kept going. She put her palm flat on the dashboard and pressed there, the way she used to put her hand on a child's back when he had a fever and you could feel the heat even through his shirt. A mother's waiting is a kind of prayer. She did not need to say that to herself. She knew it in her bones and in her wrists and in the small ache that had started in the middle of her back. She stretched just a little, and the ache stayed. She let it be. She thought of her own mother's kitchen, the red eye of the percolator winking on a back burner, the wooden spoon laid across a Pyrex bowl, the click of a screen door that let in a boy with mud on his knees and a lie in his mouth that his eyes could not manage. She thought of the day she learned to keep a quiet place even when the house would not be quiet. She rubbed her thumb and forefinger together as if there was flour on them. There was no flour. There was only the feel of skin on skin and the memory of making bread with her mother while somebody they loved was not yet home. It was not the case that she did not care what happened behind that door. It was that caring did not change what she could do from here. She could do the small, faithful things. She could make the air still in one car on one street. She could make this small bench seat a place where the worst of his fear did not have to sit. She could keep from rehearsing his voice in her head and let him take his own breath, his own time. The payphone did not ring. She looked at it anyway. A man used it once to call a number and say he had made it. She could not hear the words, but she could see his shoulders change and the way he set the receiver back like he was tired. She looked back to the door. What if he did not come out smiling? What if he came out the way he had gone in, jaw set, voice low, eyes direct, but not sure? She had lived with that question ever since a certain Saturday so long ago when another boy had not come back to her at all. She did not go to that place in her mind all the way. She just felt its edge and stepped back, like a person who knows the perimeter of a well in the yard and does not walk near it at night. Time kept moving in the small ways. The diner's first customer left a tip in nickels and dimes, and the waitress put them in her apron like blessings. The bus came and went again. A man in a hat stood near the corner and smoked a cigarette down to the end. He pinched it out and put the stub in his pocket instead of throwing it on the street. She loved him for that for a minute, for no reason at all. She slid her hand into her purse for a handkerchief and touched, without meaning to, an offering envelope she had tucked there last Sunday when she found it under the hymnal rack. She did not open it. She just pressed it between her fingers like a flat white stone and put it back. Her hand found the handkerchief. She unfolded it and touched the corner to her eyes, though they were not wet yet. The door opened once, and a man came out looking like he had forgotten something inside the minute he hit the sidewalk. He checked his pockets and went back in. She breathed and let the air go. She looked up at the top of the building where an antenna reached like a thin finger into the pale blue. The day was already getting warm. You could feel the heat gather itself even when the sun was behind a cloud. This was not her first waiting. It would not be her last. but it felt particular. The boy who had whittled toy boats with a sharp pocket knife at the kitchen table was about to discover whether a room full of strangers would let him open his mouth and tell the truth in the way he knew how to tell it. She did not pray that they would love him. She prayed that he would be who he was, whether there was a nod or a no. She moved the church fan through the air twice. She set it back. She tipped the rearview mirror down until she could see the top of her own head, then tipped it back up. She counted to 8 and did not know she had. A dog trotted behind a woman with a paper sack and stopped to look right at her through the glass, as if the dog could see the shape of her hope. She smiled at the dog in spite of herself. The dog moved on. It came to her then, the small remaking of this moment. She was not only holding him up, something was holding her. The quiet in the car was not just the engine silenced and the radio dead. It was a made place, a kept place, and she was inside it too. The ache in her back loosened a notch. She settled her shoulders against the seat, as if she had found a wall to lean on. Across the block, a tire shop rolled a stack of white walls out onto the sidewalk and leaned them like a little fort against the brick. The smell of rubber floated down and mixed with coffee and the last wet of the rain. A woman in a polka dot dress laughed into her hand at something a man said. Life did not pause because a mother was praying, but it bent itself in small ways around her quiet. She thought of the times he had come to her and not known he was coming to her, the way he would put his head down on the kitchen table and say nothing for a time, the way his hands were always nicked a little from work or playing, the way he wanted to be good even when he could not find the straightest road. She pressed her palms together and then opened them again and placed them back on the wheel. She had not eaten breakfast either. There had not been time. She had cut a heel off the loaf and put butter on it and set it in a saucer, and then left it there on the yellow formica table when he said they needed to go. She could see it in her mind now, butter softening, crumbs like stars. She would put it back under a towel when she got home if it had dried out. She would not waste it. The key sat in the ignition, with the ring turned just so the little metal tag lay flat against the column. It did not make a noise. Her fingers found it again and did not move it. She watched the door. The door opened a second time. This time it was a boy about her boy's size, but not her boy. He hurried down the steps without looking, and then stopped halfway, remembered his manners maybe, and put his hat on his head before he hit the sidewalk. He turned left and walked out of her sight. She watched the space he left for a breath, and then let it be only space again. Her mind tried to make plans. What to say if he came out with shoulders lifted? What to say if he did not? She told her mind it could sit in the back seat for now. She would not rehearse hope. She would not rehearse comfort. She would give him what he brought her and hold it steady until his own hands could do it. She looked down at her lap and smoothed the fabric there. The dress had a small snag she had not noticed before. She pressed it flat. Somewhere a radio played a hymn so soft she could not make out the words, just the shape of the tune, and she felt her throat move with it like a person who knows a song without knowing it. She did not sing. She let the sound touch the edge of her quiet and then pass on like a bird shadow crossing a road. She turned the thermos lid again, not to drink, just to hear the small click and know that she could make something start if she chose. She tightened it back down. The world outside pressed forward. Footsteps, a cough, the slide of a chair leg, a car door somewhere. She did not join it. She stayed where she was. A small thought came to her that she had not invited. If he came out and it had not gone well, would that be the end of this trying? Or would it be the beginning of something harder and longer? She did not answer. She did not make a bargain. She set her hands again and waited. She remembered his first small songs, the way he would try lines out under his breath in the barn like a boy talking to himself, and then stop when he saw her embarrassed, not because it was bad, but because it felt like he had let her into a room he did not know how to furnish yet. She smiled a little at that, and then let the smile go. She felt the slow pulse in her wrists against the wheel. The door opened a third time, and this time it was him. She knew him by the set of his shoulders before she knew him by his face. He stepped out like a man coming up from a pool of deep water and finding the air colder than he thought it would be. He paused, as if the street might have changed while he was gone, and then he started down the steps. She did not start the engine. She did not reach for the key. She watched him come like a person who has been watching the horizon for a shape to appear and now sees it. He got to the curb and looked to his left and his right like a polite boy. Then he crossed, and she could see his eyes. They were not lit up. They were not empty either. They were the eyes of a man who had gone into a room to tell the truth about himself and had not yet decided whether the room had received it. He opened the door and slid in. The car dipped a small inch under his weight. He did not shut the door all the way at first. He left it half-latched, as if he might have to get out and go back in. Then he pulled it tight, and the latch caught. He put his hands on his knees. He looked at the key in the ignition and then back at his hands. "Mama," he said, and the word was not a child's and not a grown man's. It was both. "All right," she said. She did not load the words with a question. She kept them light, like something a person could pick up without straining. "They said they will call me," he said. "Maybe, maybe not. I sang." She nodded. "All right." She did not hurry him. She did not tell him it would come to pass or that it would not. She did not reach for his face. She reached for his shoulder and set her hand there like a person setting a warm iron on cloth to smooth out what can be smoothed. He let out a breath he had been holding since before he went in. It made a sound like a small tire losing a little air, not a blowout, just a soft give. He did not look at her. He looked at the dash clock like a man watching time come back into the world. She did not tell him she had been praying. She did not need to. Her waiting had been the prayer all along. She kept her hand where it was and felt the heat of him through the fabric of his jacket and the shirt under it, and under that the thin layer of a young man who had not slept much and had tried to be brave. He reached up and touched the key like a person touching a doorknob to see if the house is ready to be entered. He did not turn it. He let it be. He laid his hand back down. Outside, the city kept waking. Inside the car, a small piece settled like dust in sunlight. She moved her fingers once on his shoulder, not to pat him, not to rock him, just to say, with the smallest movement a human hand can make, "I am here." She did not say those words. She did not need to. He did not need to hear the words.